Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Vegan Proteins Muscles by Brussels Radio. My name is Danny.
And I'm Giacomo.
And this is episode 118. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are still gearing up for our Worcester Veg Fest, now called the New England Veg Fest, which I'm very excited about. So nice to be not getting on a plane to travel to a show.
How it hasn't been called the Worcester Veg Fest in like almost 15 years, but we still remember when it used to be called Worcester Veg. I think it changed the name at least 10 years ago, I want to say. It went from Worcester to... there was something else in the middle, but now it's called the New England Veg Fest, which is kind of cool just to see how much things have changed over the years. But I still remember them doing it in a school, in the cafeteria downstairs as the Worcester Veg Fest. Way back in the day.
What, the first one was in an airport. Did you forget about that?
No, I think the airport was after the cafeteria. The very first one we ever went to was in a cafeteria.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one year it was in an airport, which was super bizarre, but very fun.
I thought that was super cool, actually.
Yeah. We're also going to the Boulder in Colorado with Vegan Strong, which is also very cool. A new event we've never been to. An endurance event, which we have never tabled at an endurance event before. This should be interesting.
Well, Vegan Strong has, but we haven't with Vegan Strong, right? Or is this the first time Vegan Strong is tabled at an endurance event? It is. Wowza. So from what I saw on the website, there's 50,000 participants, 70,000 spectators, and it's a 10K
run.
Yeah.
And I'm considering maybe doing it. Because we're not actually tabling during the race. We're tabling the 2 days before the race, which is interesting. I can't imagine how that setup would be, but apparently the expo itself is huge. And I'm certainly not running a hilly 10K at a high elevation, but maybe just doing it would be cool. I haven't decided yet.
Would we do it together?
I don't know. After your arrogant, I could do that in my sleep. I don't even need to train for it at all. After that little bit, I'm thinking I might do it by myself. But hey, yeah, maybe if you want to.
I might secretly sign up on my own and just kind of wave hello, maybe a couple paces in front of you just to add insult to injury. Or I might
That
not.
certainly won't be traumatizing like the 8th grade Prudential Mile at all. I don't know why I have such a horrible relationship with running. No, go on.
Look, it sounds like a lot of fun to me. I hope that we get to do it. If nothing else, Colorado, I love you. Colorado inspired me. I don't know if you know this about me, but oh gosh, it was like 10, 15 years ago. And we went to Colorado. I'm like, this whole entire place, everywhere I look, everyone is fit from young to old in between. What is my excuse? And ever since that day, I got my butt in gear and I never stopped. No matter what, I never created an excuse for myself. So Colorado, I love you.
Yeah.
And
Colorado's a pretty cool place.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Really, truly, everyone there is active. Anyways, today, let's jump right into it.
Today we're talking about body composition. So, how much of your body is made up of muscle, how much of your body is made up of fat, and why a lot of times the place that people want to live with their body composition might not actually be the best place for them to stay. And talking about that a little bit. And this topic was actually inspired by watching Physical 100, which, if you have not watched Physical 100 on Netflix, I can't recommend it enough. I might have mentioned this in a previous podcast. It was so cool, so fun. So let me back up. First of all, Corinne is the one who got me to watch this, so thanks, Corinne. But it is a Korean show, so it is all in Korean. I watched it with the English dubbed version because watching it with just English subtitles was confusing because it's a reality show and so many people were talking. You couldn't tell who was saying what subtitle. I don't usually watch stuff dubbed over in English. This is funny, dubbed over in English, but very good. So they take 100 of the most athletic people in South Korea and they put them through a series of absolutely insane tests to find who is the most fit, athletic physique in South Korea. And it was very cool. In the very first episode, they introduce all 100 people. It's a little slow in the beginning because they do introduce all 100 of them. The variety of physiques and types of athletes and ages of athletes and just body types in general is crazy. There's gymnasts, there's dancers and cheerleaders, there's strongmen and powerlifters and bodybuilders and Olympic skiers and like Olympic sledders. There's a name for it. I can't remember the name of the sport, but that's what it looks like. It looks like sledding, but face first. It looks terrifying, to be honest. But CrossFitters, swimmers, like an insane number of types of athletes, and to see them all lined up just from the beginning, I was just like, this is gonna be awesome. And I don't even like reality TV, but this was awesome. And it got me thinking about how, and I could tell I was watching it alongside Corinne and Giacomo and Robert Cheek, and I could tell Robert thought he knew who was going to win everything based on what they looked like. And I won't spoil who wins, but it was not even close to what Robert thought. And I didn't think it was going to be. But it just goes to show how our perception of what is the most athletic is often wrong.
Yeah. How do you feel about how the athletes were working together and how that affected who was able to actually win versus who was sort of working with the collective? But I mean, obviously each one of them wanted to be number one, right? Mm-hmm. But they're all kind of, what I noticed it was is interesting because it's like in order to be number one, you still have to work with everyone else.
Well, okay, now you're just getting into the nitty gritty of the actual show, which I was not planning on getting into. Some of the challenges were individual, some of the challenges were one-on-one, some of the challenges were group challenges. So certainly there was a strategy to determining that sort of stuff, but I don't really want to get into that because I don't think it's worth diving into. You should just watch the show, guys. It's really fun.
But we're reflecting here basically on those who were the most shredded were not exactly the ones winning out.
No, not at all. So there were quite a few bodybuilders who looked amazing. They looked like goddamn Greek gods, like looked incredible. But when it came time to actually do certain things, they were not great at it, you know? And again, I don't want to spoil it, but those people who were super, super shredded had certain limitations that we don't often think of. And some of the people that just looked like, gasp, regular dudes performed the best. I will say it was men and women. It was so cool. The whole thing was so cool. But a lot of people that just looked like, yeah, that guy probably goes to the gym, maybe, I guess, kind of, were the ones that were just like sweeping the floor with everybody. And that is what I want people to think about today. Why? Why is that the case? So let's talk about why a body fat percentage that maybe is not your favorite place to be might actually be the best, healthiest, strongest, athletic place to be.
Well, first off, before we get into that, I do want to not discourage you from wanting to look a certain way. I do feel, well, obviously it's my bias, but I do feel like there's no harm in wanting to look a certain way, and it's as opposed to like, oh, I'm training for functional fitness and that's going to make me perform the best and where my body's going to be at its best. Not necessarily. You can train for aesthetics and still be perfectly strong and perform at a high level in whatever you do, not just like look in a certain way. But when you're super lean, you're just a lot more fragile.
Yes. Yeah, you're definitely more fragile. And I wanted to say, okay, so I won't give specifics, but obviously the people who were totally shredded didn't do as well as we thought maybe they would. Some of them did pretty well, but eventually that was not the case. The other side of that was also true. Some of the strongest men in the country were also very large men, right? Like they were very muscular, but also they carried around a lot of body fat as well. And the very first challenge is how long can you hang from a bar? Guess who didn't do super great in that? The people that carried around a lot of extra weight. So it goes in both directions. So I'm not trying to say like, oh, maybe just having lots of body fat is a really great thing. That's not what I'm suggesting. what I am suggesting is that being super shredded is what most people think is like the place to be. I will be super, super fit when I look like this.
Wait, is that actually true? And let me ask my question here. Is it true that people think that when they look shredded, they're going to be physically strong and physically fit, or are they just in love with the way that look looks?
Well, it depends on who we're talking about when we say people. If we're talking about this podcast listeners, probably not. I think they're smart enough to have picked up on the fact at this point that no, you're like, how many times can we say I've never felt so weak and shitty as I did on the day of a bodybuilding show? But to the average person, like just walking around, not really in the fitness space, yes, they absolutely think that you are the fittest, strongest, fastest person when you look a certain way.
Whose fault is that?
Society. We live in a society. Giacomo doesn't even get that meme. Don't worry about it. Yeah, that's just the way society portrays things. I mean, look at all the Marvel superheroes and stuff, which we inherently know isn't real because it's comic books, but they're all shredded. And that's the illusion that's yes. My point is yes. Most people would say yes. But when you are very shredded, not only are you like in a hormonal funk, men and women, so that making progress becomes significantly harder, you're also not in any kind of an energy surplus. If anything, you're kind of dipping into a little bit of a, even if you're just maintaining, right? You're dipping under your caloric maintenance several times throughout the day. There's not a lot of extra glycogen flowing around your body. So you're like bonking multiple times throughout the day because there's just not enough energy flowing through your body.
What's bonking?
Hitting an energetic wall.
Uh-huh. Yeah, fair enough. And I'm going to talk strictly about the way that your body's built. Mass moves mass. Too much mass ain't going to help you move mass. I mean, in theory, your leverages would be shorter, so maybe you'd have less room to travel and you could, in the context of bodybuilding, but like too much mass ain't going to help you move mass. And too little mass, it's just, again, your body is fragile. So if you don't have enough meat on your bones, it's a lot harder to move your body in a healthy way, and you're a lot more likely to damage your muscle tissue or just like not, it's not even like the energy that you have. I mean, that's part of it, to your point, Danny. The other part of it is your body physically needs to be in a healthy place, not just hormonally, but just like actually the way that you're built. You need some padding on your muscles and your bones to be able to move your body fluidly. It's that simple, So it may not look the way you want it to look, but when your body's built up strong physically because you have more than just like muscle, bone, and a modest amount of body fat, you're going to be able to move your body well.
Yeah,
put it that way.
Your joints are going to be in a healthier place. They're going to be able to take a little bit more of a beating when you have a little bit more body fat on your body. I mean, obviously your speed and agility and all of that is going to be better when you have a little bit of body fat on your body, because guess what body fat is? It's energy. Like, we forget all the time that body fat is stored energy. That's all body fat is. It's energy sources that we can tap into. So when you don't have any body fat and your body bonks, you drop below that caloric maintenance line and you go into a little bit of a deficit, even if it's for just a couple of hours, there are no more resources. And your body has to do like all kinds of internal gymnastics to break something down for energy. And when you have some body fat, it's much simpler. It's like, oh shoot, there's no more energy. Just tap into those body fat reserves, which we're very good at using. So there's a lot of reasons for it. You're also more hormonally primed to build muscle when you have a little bit of body fat on your body, which we forget all of the time.
Yeah, because you're too busy falling in love with the way that you look and not realizing like your body's just not primed to perform like that. Like, there's no harm in liking the way you look like that. Just like you ain't gonna necessarily do as much with it as you think you can. And until you get there, you don't really know, right? And you might be fooling yourself when you're there because you like the way that you look. But again, Just think about your leverages. Aside from, yeah, like what Danny was saying, your connective tissue is just not going to feel so hot when you don't have something more than just muscle keeping your body put together. And again, like internally, your mechanisms ain't going to be working properly in a way where you can recover and perform at a good rate, at a good pace.
Let's see, what else? They didn't go over this in the show, but I certainly know it to be true. You're in a better mood when you have more body fat. Like versus when you have virtually no body fat. When you have some body fat on your body, oh, the world just is a sunnier, happier place. And all of your relationships are just that much better because you have it. I have a girl right now who's getting ready for a show. She's really, really close, and it's her first competition. And she's like, so I noticed I'm a little bit edgy this week. And I was like, oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Your verbal filter just disappears at a certain point when your body fat's getting lower and lower. And that is part of it. Like, having some body fat is going to make your relationships better. It's going to make your sex life a whole lot better. It's going to make just your interactions with human beings, generally speaking, better.
In most spaces. I'm sure there's like a space or two where everyone's like, yeah, we're all really lean and fit and happy to be around here with each other. But like in real life, where most of relationships and conversations take place, and just in general, the way you feel inside your body, more often than not, yeah, you're going to be that edgy, like, person who's just a little bit off when you're a little leaner than you should be most of the time.
We're a lot off. Right, Giacomo?
I know what you're talking about.
Let's see. Well, so a lot of times people think that they need to get shredded. This is very, very, very subjective. And I don't think we should do anything because of what somebody else thinks of it, really. But I think this is worth noting because a lot of people don't think of it. A lot of people think they're going to get shredded and other people are going to find them very attractive, right? It's basically a joke to the point that it's a meme at this point of guys thinking that they're going to get in really awesome shredded shape and attract women. But what ends up happening is they get in really attractive shredded shape and other shredded men are like, wow, dude, good job. Good job. Like they're all just patting each other on the butts because they're so impressed with each other's physiques, but it's not like what they set out to do. It's basically a joke at this point, but it's kind of true. Like, I mean, you and I are different because we do love this sport, but most of the time that really shredded kind of a look, most people don't like it.
Most.
I do, and you do, obviously, and a lot of other very fitness-minded people might, but the general population actually thinks it's just gross. Like, interesting, but kind of gross.
Do you remember when you first started when we first started getting those comments as a company, when people were like, what are you trying to look like? Like, who asked you? Just like, you think that it's a certain look, and then you realize like the Gen Pop just does not see a super lean aesthetic physique as something that's attractive or aspirational.
Yeah, they don't see it as aspirational. It
seems like
they're
weird
just like,
and circusy like.
Yeah, ew, I would like to stop like 5 steps before that. Yeah, there are many periods in my life where I've just gotten comments on my stuff that are just like, gross. And I'm like, thanks. But, in that regard, I mean, I'm not saying you should have more body fat because of other people, but if you're thinking you're going to get super shredded and everybody's jaw is just going to drop in awe of your sexiness, unfortunately, that is not the way it actually plays out. Just saying. I mean, people might stare, but it's not for that reason.
Yeah. So, a body that you don't love. Let's see. We've talked about how it's better for you energy-wise, better for your relationships, better for your physical performance in general, and your body winds up recovering better. Those are pretty much the reasons, if you ask me, why a body that you don't love may be the best thing for you. But
well, maybe we should call this something different because I don't even like it was never supposed to be a body you don't love. It was supposed to be a body composition you don't love.
Why don't we why don't we define what we're even talking about here, body composition wise? We're not talking about being overweight. We're not talking about being in a place where you don't look aesthetically good. It's just you're not looking for that lean, shredded look. So I don't feel like an athletic look necessarily is one where you're not going to perform. It's just a matter of you don't want to look so athletic that you're starting to look shredded, put it that way. And unfortunately, I feel like the lines are a little blurry here, and this is a little bit of a gray area because what people who are in the fitness industry portray and what people who are fans of or involved in the fitness industry, not even the industry, but like just part of that audience, it's a little distorted here when you think of what an athletic look is, unfortunately. An athletic look, in my opinion, is one where you are reasonably lean, but not like super lean. Does that make sense? To kind of redefine that? No?
I mean, that's not really a very clear definition.
No, it's not.
I don't even think it's worth it to get into like actual percentage numbers.
Oh,
like, I don't think it's worth it for this. But I guess the point was just that ideal, like, oh, I just want to get to this look and I want to stay there forever. There's a lot of reasons why you might actually not want to do that. Reasons both in performance and athleticism, but also in your real life. I also thought of another one. Elderly people that just want to lose weight or get thinner or get leaner. Like, there comes a point in old age where you want extra weight on your body. Like, many people in their final years, part of the reason that they pass is because they have wasted away to nothing. And when you have a little bit more to your frame before you reach that point, you just have more stores to tap into as we get older.
And it is never too late. Yes, it is harder to build muscle when your body is actively losing muscle after a certain age, which starts to happen, I want to say, in your mid to late 40s, where you're actively losing muscle. And the muscle that you lose over time, that number grows year after year. But you can prevent muscle loss and even gain muscle no matter what your starting point is age-wise, no matter where you are at. You just have to be smart about it, and you have to actively pursue putting on muscle. Mm-hmm. But if you're staying on the lighter side and the leaner side, guess what? Your bone density is going to decrease, so that proposes a risk in and of itself. You have less energy stores, so if something goes wrong in your system because you can only fight the aging process so much, you're going to have a harder time fighting it off, hard time recovering from it, and it may actually be the reason why you face disease, because you don't have energy stores for your body to just take care of itself. That kind of stuff is scary, and it's all the more reason to just consider not trying to stay perpetually lean all the damn time, even after you've already built the body that you want. If you were lucky enough to get there, over like many years of doing everything right and doing everything well. And if you aren't, by all means, like, focus on stronger, healthier bones and stronger and more muscle, and not necessarily getting too hung up on the idea of being lighter and leaner, right? Because it could actually shoot you in the foot in many ways.
It really can shoot you in the foot in many ways. And I guess I should have said this at the beginning of our last episode. The month of May, the whole theme of the month of May is building muscle and growing. So our next podcast is going to be about 10 tips for building muscle for vegans. And then the last one in the month is going to be about, like, what does it actually take to gain weight? Like, on purpose, like, mentally, physically, what does it take? Because that's a really hard thing to do. And hopefully you guys have picked up on the fact that some of y'all need to do it, and we're going to help you try to tackle that. So yeah, I just figured I would explain, and that's kind of what we're chit-chatting about for the month of May. But yeah, just something to consider. I really, truly, not even like, I really do think people should check out Physical 100. Apparently there's some drama around like it as well, and some people got injured, and maybe it should have been designed better. But I'll tell you this, it looks like whoever designed the challenges for this show also had their hands in writing Squid Game. These challenges are bonkers, just absolutely nuts, sadistic, crazy, awesome to watch as a spectator. And really eye-opening and I guess informative, I guess, like from a coaching perspective, like, wow, look at how all of these different physiques and professional athletes perform XYZ challenge based on what they are very good at and what they excel at and what they kind of fail at. Like, it's just super, super cool. I definitely think you should check it out.
Hey listeners, we hope you've been enjoying this episode and we appreciate your love of all things vegan fitness. For those of you who want even more support on your vegan fitness journey, check out our Muscles by Brussels community and become a member. By joining the team, you are one of our exclusive VIPs. As a member, you'll find over 200 macro-friendly, high-protein recipes that can meet any of your meal planning needs. You'll also receive training programs that update monthly. This training has progressive overload built into it, so you can be sure if you're following the program, you are making progress. All of this and more is located inside our Vegan Proteins members only app. As a Muscles by Brussels member, you'll unlock bonus courses, challenges, and more every month. You'll also be invited to our live Zoom video calls, which happen 2 times a month, and are absolute gold to those who show up. And if you can't make the calls, don't worry, you have the opportunity to email us whenever you want. You'll receive a video response to all of your questions from one of the coaches here at Vegan Proteins every time you message us. Members also receive 40% off many of our other services. And of course, our private community of like-minded individuals is like no other. Best of all, you can try this membership out for a full month at no cost to you with this special offer for our listeners only, because we appreciate and want to fully support you. Use the link in our show notes to sign up for your free trial today. We hope to see you on our next live coaching call.
Moving on to our Q&A segment for today's episode. Danny, what are your thoughts on the pressure to have a certain body type as a vegan bodybuilder?
Interesting. Well, I guess if we're talking about competitively, like as a competitive vegan bodybuilder, I guess that is the sport. The sport is to have a certain body type depending on which category you're in. So in a competitive sense, totally on board with it. That's fine. That's what you sign up for. If you mean like just as somebody who says, oh, I bodybuild, I'm a vegan bodybuilder, and how people expect you to look all the time, I don't like it. Like, I don't think that there should be pressure to look a certain way, especially by people that don't understand the sport. Like, for the sport, yes, you absolutely need to look a certain way on a certain day on that stage. But people have this misconception that people look like that all the time. And not only would that make them terrible at their sport, like, understand that. If someone looks like that all the time, they suck at the sport. They're never getting better. So I think it's not anybody's fault. People just don't understand the sport in general. So, but yes, to be a bodybuilder and to say you're a bodybuilder, there are particular pressures that people put on you. But also when you say you're a vegan bodybuilder, I think there's additional pressures because you want to represent veganism very well, but not to the point that you just cave in and try to fit that mold all the time and then not be good at the actual sport that you're trying to perform at. So, it's tough sometimes if I don't introduce hi, I'm Danny, I'm a vegan bodybuilder. That's not how I introduce myself. But oftentimes some kind family member will be like, oh, you should meet Danny. She's a vegan bodybuilder. And I immediately feel like I want to start justifying why I look the way I look right now. And it's like, I won't. I'm not actually going to do that. But I can tell sometimes people want to be like, oh, well, you don't really look like a bodybuilder right now. And it's like, oh, they don't know. They just don't know. So just let it go. Kind of like that. Or people will be like, oh, you look different than you do in this picture. And it's like, yeah, well, in that picture, I had been dieting my ass off for 30 weeks. And I don't do that all the time. So it's challenging, But you also, I think, in order to be decent at bodybuilding, you need a really, really thick skin about what basically a panel of complete strangers is going to say to you about your body, and just recognize that strangers everywhere will all of a sudden feel entitled to speak about your body. And if you can't handle that, this definitely is not the sport for you. All right, Giacomo. Is eating more protein than needed a bad thing?
Yeah, I think it is. And here's why. You need to eat a certain amount of food to reach your goal or to do what you want with your body, blah, blah, blah. You're going to eat a certain amount of food for the day. And if you're eating more protein than you actually need, you're pretty much taking in an inferior source of energy. Protein has the highest energy demands to metabolize. You actually wind up burning calories just to metabolize protein. Why would you want to be using that as fuel when you could be getting in some carbohydrates, for example? And that is the most readily convertible source of energy. You get in carbohydrates and it's the easiest source of energy to use for the day. Secondly, there's a reason why getting in more protein than you need to be getting in for the day that's being utilized as energy is a bad thing, because you only need to get in a certain amount of protein for a day. Protein serves a purpose in terms of, well, aside from satiety, because obviously something that requires energy to metabolize is going to be satiating. It passes through your digestive system more slowly. You only need biologically, you only need a certain amount of protein for the day. Protein is going to help create muscle protein synthesis, which is just a fancy way of saying is going to trigger muscle growth and muscle repair. You can only do so much of that in a day. So after you get in the amount that you need for a day, the rest of it is going to be used for energy or energy storage. And why would you want to tax your system to store energy, and why would you want to tax your system to use energy? Well, the answer is simple. You wouldn't. You'd want to get in fat, or you'd want to get in carbohydrates, more carbohydrates than fat. The reasons why you would get in more protein than you actually need, as opposed to having a little bit of insurance to make sure you're preventing muscle tissue wasting in, say, a dieting down phase, is, well, maybe you want to feel satiated, or maybe you just enjoy foods that are high in protein. But to a point, my friends, at some point you're actually taking in an inferior source of energy that is taxing on your system internally, and that inferior source of energy is not helping fuel your efforts, performance-wise and recovery-wise. So that is why it is arguably not helpful to be consuming more protein than you actually need. All right, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Vegan Proteins Muscles by Brussels Radio. Feel free to hit the contact button on Vegan Proteins and send us a message. You will always get a personal response from one of the coaches here. And of course, stay in touch with us on socials, on YouTube, Instagram, everywhere really, at Vegan Proteins, at I Am Just Athena, at Muscles by Brussels. Once again, my name is Giacomo.
And I'm Danny.
And we'll talk to you soon.